Hi everyone, I'm back today, and I'm going to give you some facts about the Puritans and the Salem Witch Trials, because I just feel like it's a little bit timely since Thanksgiving is coming up. Now, granted, the pilgrims that founded Plymouth are a little bit different than the Puritans that were there during the Salem Witch Trials. So the main difference is that the pilgrims were separatists, meaning that they want to completely break away from the Church of England, while the Puritans that were there during the Salem Witch Trials were more just wanting to reform the Church of England. So that's the main difference. But since they're all kind of in the same vein, I figured I'll do this video today. So it's just going to be a little bit of a continuation of my previous videos about the Salem Witch Trials and my novel Wander Among Shadows. So without further ado, let's get into it. So just first things first, just to clarify some myths surrounding the Puritans and the Salem Witch Trials. The Puritans did not dress in all black. They wore all kinds of colors. Now, during the Salem Witch Trials, nobody was actually burned at the stake. Under English law, witchcraft was a crime punished by hanging, so anybody that was convicted of witchcraft was hanged. They were not burned. Now, some people also have this idea that if you confessed to witchcraft during the Salem Witch Trials, you were able to avoid execution, but that's not exactly how it worked. Usually those that confessed were just lucky enough that their trials were either postponed long enough, once the court was reconvened in 1693, that they were actually found not guilty, or their executions were postponed long enough that they were able to be reprieved later on. Also, it wasn't just young girls that had made accusations of witchcraft in 1692, it was also grown men and women that did. So let's talk about some facts surrounding the Puritans. So Puritans could be very harsh when it came to punishments. For example, they took resting on the Sabbath very seriously, so if you were caught doing any kind of labor on Sunday, no matter how menial, you could be very well put in the stocks or fined for that. They also had punishments from everything ranging from fornicating before you were married or even being of a different faith. And these punishments could range from whipping, branding, maiming, and of course, in the case of witchcraft, execution. Another fact about the Puritans is that they were actually more supportive of the mentally ill than later generations. I did a whole video on this, but basically they were much better at making sure the mentally ill were taken care of in their homes. Communities could even help pay for them and things like that. If you want to check out more information about that, my video will be linked at the end of the video so you can see a more in-depth analysis of that. And then finally, Puritans gave their kids some crazy names. So they had like typical names that you still see today, like Mary, John, Sarah, etc. But some of them could also be kind of out there. Some of them were also just like virtues that they wanted their children to have instilled within them. So they could even name their kids something like humiliation or prudence, something to that effect. And then they also had just very long ones. In fact, one family named their child, "If Christ had not died for thee, thou hast been damned." Which, yeah, try writing that on your forms. And then some were just kind of out there. Like, they had one named Wrestling, another one called Fly Debate. I don't know. And you thought celebrities had some crazy baby names. Now, on to some facts about the Salem Witch Trials. So, as you might have already guessed, based on knowledge you had previously or watching my other videos, the judicial system at this time was very much rigged against the accused. So, first off, they allowed spectral evidence, which is pretty much when an afflicted person can come forward and say that the accused spirit came to them and hurt them. Now, some of the accused would try to say that somebody else had taken the form of their spirit, or that, it just wasn't them. The accusers were mistaken, but this pretty much came to no good because the judges held the belief that the devil could only take the shape of a guilty person. Another issue was also that our modern day concept of innocent until proven guilty didn't really exist back then. And sometimes the judges and the officials in charge would go to harsh lengths to get confessions. One of the most notorious examples of this during the Salem Witch Trials is when two young boys were actually tortured to get them to confess. Something else that we would find crazy today is that the accused were not allowed to have lawyers with them. They had to represent themselves. So you can imagine if you're a young girl or if you're just a basic housewife back then, like going up against experienced magistrates, how on earth can you possibly win? And then another problem too is that the judges could influence the jury as well. An example of this is when Rebecca Nurse's jury found her not guilty. Judge William Stoughton actually ordered the jury members to go back and reconsider evidence of words she had spoken that seemed to imply her guilt. Unfortunately, the jury came back this time and found her guilty, and she was later hanged. Another thing about the Salem Witch Trials is how long and far gossip could go. A lot of the people that were initially accused were accused because of things that had been said about them years prior. For example, Bridget Bishop, who was the first person to be hanged, had been accused of witchcraft 10 years before 1692, and the accusations came back to haunt her later that year. Gossip could also reach very far. For instance, Martha Carrier of Andover was blamed for the town's smallpox outbreak in the 1680s, which caused the deaths of 13 people. This gossip had reached all the way to Salem Village, and by 1692 she would find herself hanged for it. Something else people don't realize about the Salem Witch Trials is that it was not just contained to Salem. I explored this more in my other videos, which will also be linked at the end of the video as well. But the town of Andover had its own witch outbreak. A lot of people in that town were accused, especially as the accusations spread along family lines. And the town of Andover actually gained their own set of afflicted girls, which included Rose Foster, Martha Sprague, Sarah Phelps, and Abigail Martin. Eventually, 3 people from Andover would be hanged during the trials, but there was so much backlash in the town against the accusations that many of its members signed a petition to the court against them, and this also helped turn public opinion against the trials as well. And finally, one other thing about the Salem Witch Trials that actually worked in favor of the accused is that they could get out on bail. So at first I didn't think bail even existed back then, but after some more research into it, I did find out that starting in October of 1692, a lot of the accused were able to be released from prison through recognizance, which is a form of bail. At first it was children that were primarily released through this, but then some other people were released as well under the condition that once their trial date was set that they show up to court for it. So that's just some more info on the Puritans and the Salem Witch Trials. If you want more information on this subject, my blog post about this is below, so be sure to check that out. I also have the previous videos that I did as well, so you can watch those too. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Thanks for watching, hit that like button, and subscribe.